Before we begin with the sacking, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my fellow compadre Tom Grossi. If you haven't heard of him, he's a heathen Packers fan, but makes up for it with entertaining videos about the NFL at large. Skits about the league and teams, a lighthearted affair all around. He also looks a lot better on camera than me. Stop on by his channel and stay a while. Subscribe to him while you're at it. You won't regret it, I swear. It's fun to use the powers of hindsight. It's our greatest strength as a species, just saying. To think that we considered this moment as potentially the beginning of a great stretch of Jacksonville football. The pivotal point in the age of Sacksonville. Marching into Pittsburgh and upending a team full of drama and arrogance. There were two paths that could be taken from this point. One, the path of nobility. Learn from the errors of those who were bested, become stronger for them, use your abilities to forge a new identity. The other path, the forest of decadence. To embrace the vices that destroyed many teams before you. To ignore the true goal in favor of cutthroat politics, favoritism, and power tripping. Take a guess as to which path the Jaguars chose.
Bortles upstairs, wide open, Tommy Bohannon, touchdown Jacksonville!
Heading into Foxborough in the AFC Championship game, Jacksonville was playing with house money. It was a season of incredible success. Years of futility and ineptitude blossomed into a legitimate contender. The offense wasn't the greatest group in the world, but Blake Bortles wasn't absolutely terrible. He was passable as a short-term option, especially complemented by an emerging running back in Leonard Fournette. It was enough to aid the main prize, the elite defense. A group blessed with talent, one that dubbed themselves with a name to be feared, Sacksonville. A defensive line boasting a resurgent Calais Campbell, Malik Jackson, Avery Jones, and an emerging edge rusher in Yannick Ngakoue. A mid-season trade for Marcel Darius only made the front even more deadly. Veteran Paul Posluszny anchoring a linebacking core flanked by two strong young stars in Telvin Smith and Miles Jack. At cornerback, loaded. Arguably the best corner in the game in Jalen Ramsey shutting down number one receivers. AJ Bouye covering the other side equally as good. Deshaun Gibson and Barry Church manning the safety positions. It was built for both the present and the future. Proof enough how they were holding their own against an empire in New England. Hell, they were up by 10 against them in the fourth quarter. The impossible was almost reality. All the offense had to do was hold the football. The defense was starting to bend, but they did enough against the Steelers. What happened? 3 and out, 6-play drive, 3 and out. The only good play was a 20-yard pass to D.D. Westbrook. The offense failed and the defense couldn't hold. By the time the Patriots took the lead, the Jaguars' offense was long flaccid. All they needed was one drive to get to the Super Bowl, and even that couldn't be done. But at least the future looked bright. There's finally hope in Duval. Tom Coughlin was entering a pivotal offseason at the helm. An old head coach and the most successful one in Jacksonville's short history thrust into an executive role. Flanked by his loyal servant Doug Marrone on his right and Dave Caldwell the GM on his left, the triumvirate needed to decide the fate of a few different pieces. In particular, quarterback. Blake Bortles still has pedigree. He leaves a lot to be desired, but he bounced back somewhat after a god-awful 2016 campaign. It's enough for the group to throw a nice reward contract in his face with $26 million guaranteed. It was interesting. It relied on Bortles continuing to develop for it to pay off, but the defense was the key. Paul Posluszny was retiring after a long career of service. His void needed to be filled. That will come in time, however, as the 2018 season is beginning. Besides notoriety, there was another element that was starting to rise. A seedy attribute that spread like wildfire from the players to management to the fan base. Arrogance. The same vice that led to the downfall of the team they embarrassed in Pittsburgh the season before. The main culprit none other than golden child Jalen Ramsey. Apparently, the only skill he developed was in shit-talking. Remember that interview with GQ magazine? About how he called most quarterbacks in the league shit, painting a massive target on the team's back for the season? Leonard Fournette telling Ezekiel Elliott to hit a treadmill? The defense eating the shit fed to them from every angle? The organization believing that nothing needed to be changed on offense? And the fan base. This isn't even hearsay about their fans. Look at the comments from the old Jacksonville video from a few years ago. Duval became insufferable. Unbelievably insufferable. This whole organization hadn't been in this spot for a long time, but sure as hell acted like it. You guys had 1 year, and suddenly you think you're the hottest shit this side of the Mississippi. If you're going to talk that much shit in every aspect, you better be able to back it up. Although, when you end up getting a petty revenge against New England at home in week 2, it will at least justify it. I mean, they are 3-1 and looking like one of the best teams in football. A hot matchup against Kansas City will assert their dominance. Or at least it would if they weren't rounded up and shot beforehand. That's the only explanation I've got. A bounce back against the Cowboys, you thought? Try a massacre. On the other end. Utter destruction of that so-called elite defense for 60 straight minutes. The walls are crumbling. Same as Blake Bortles' disguise as a quarterback against the Texans. Things getting so bad that he was benched in favor of the backup who ran the offense significantly better than the bonus baby. They still lose the game easily.
I've made a huge mistake.
How about a nice trip to London where the players celebrate Friday night with bottle service and club life? They're so haughty that they believe a 50,000-pound tab would be on the house. They don't take not being treated as gods lightly, starting fights with security and 4 of them being thrown into the slammer. The game itself with Philadelphia didn't go so well, but that's unsurprising. After the bye, a trip to Indianapolis where they find out about Eric Ebron. By the way, didn't Ramsey call Andrew Luck trash? I thought he did. And then there's the skirmish against the Steelers in Jacksonville. Oh boy, was this a fun one. Totally dominating them on defense, yet still losing because the offense is diarrhea and Blake Bortles can't throw a football. Nathaniel Hackett is forced to fall on the sword after the game, probably up the gut like most of his running plays. At least they had some fight in them against Buffalo. By that I mean physically fighting the players. Perhaps that will help Leonard Fournette's sophomore slump, or Blake Bortles not being garbage, then continue by being stomped by Tennessee and Derrick Henry ad nauseum, and then being humiliated by the Redskins and Josh Johnson, who hadn't won a game at the NFL level.
Oh no! We suck again!
5-11. A total disaster of a season. That's why you look before you leap in the art of shit-talking, boys, because you end up smelling like it if you aren't careful. You should have obviously been more entitled and arrogant. That might have fixed the awful offense. To think that Tom Coughlin, a man notorious for discipline and structure, manned a helm that was as chaotic as the fall of Rome. Well, Father Coughlin will let them know who's in charge. Bring out the guillotine. Blake Bortles, you suck, get wrecked. Malik Jackson, you're expendable and the cap is coming for us. You get to die. Barry Church, you were part of that London fiasco. Fuck off to hell. Deshaun Gibson, that's all I needed to say. Now the question of the next quarterback would come into play. They needed to get the stench of Bortles off and quickly. Who did they decide to go after? Not someone of the future, but a desperation heave and a quick fix. Nick Foles, a man who was known for a meme and an underdog Super Bowl run. A situational quarterback who's best in short doses, not as a permanent starter. Didn't stop Duvall from throwing $50 million guaranteed. Jesus fuck, what are you doing? You think you could have saved some of that money for, Ngakoue or Ramsey? The 2 key defenders who were pissed and want new contracts? Jalen arrived at training camp in a Brinks truck and Yannick didn't show up to camp for a while, so guess where their priorities are? In fact, what about replacing Telvin Smith? Oh yeah, he's gone and fucked off too. Didn't see that one coming, did ya? Telvin feels the need to go on exodus from football to find himself. Noble and respectable. Until apparently finding himself meant fucking a 17-year-old girl. Not as noble and respectable. As for Big Dick Nick, injured in week 1, isn't the same quarterback when he comes back and is promptly benched for an upstart rookie in Gardner Minshew. Total flop of a signing. Well done. I would keep applauding you, but Jalen Ramsey's had enough of the bullshit. He decided to just stop playing for the team. He'd say that nagging injuries were holding him back from playing, but we all know why he wasn't. He wanted out. He eventually got his wish, and wouldn't you guess it, he's spry and ready to play for Los Angeles. Here's the issue with the Ramsey trade to the Rams. In a vacuum, it's a great deal for Jacksonville. They got tremendous value for a guy who was going to demand a premium contract and became a locker room distraction. Signs pointed to Ramsey not being the man worthy of paying that much money to. The problem here was that the Jags gave up something far more valuable. Franchise credibility. A lot of fans put their hopes and dreams onto Jalen Ramsey, and trading a centerpiece of a team that was finally turning it around crushed them. Some fans that may have come back into the fold gave up and left again. It was a Pyrrhic victory of sorts. They got what they wanted, but the price they had to pay was far more significant than they could have imagined. I wish I could say this was the worst thing to happen, but it's nowhere near it. And I'm not talking about the 6-10 season. That was honestly to be expected with that offense. Remember what I said about Tom Coughlin being a disciplinarian? About how he demanded order and structure no matter what? If I were to say he stepped over that line 10 too many times, it would be putting it lightly. Over a 2-year span, Jaguars players accounted for 1/4 of all grievances in the league. The Jacksonville players filed a grievance against the team for forced treatment in-house for injuries during the offseason. If they refused to report for this in-house rehab, they would be incrementally fined for each discretion. As an example, Dante Fowler got fined over $700,000 for missing these mandatory appointments. Things got so dire that the NFLPA had to step in, writing a completely damning statement regarding the Jacksonville organization. Most importantly, the Players Union warned all of their constituents to not sign with Jacksonville unless things changed. Coughlin lusted for control, even at the cost of his own reputation and, of course, organizational dignity. He was unsurprisingly pushed off of a cliff by a bulldozer 2 days later. If he didn't set his watch 5 minutes ahead, perhaps he could have missed his dire fate. But what to do about his underlings Marone and Caldwell? In the usual circumstances, the people under the head honcho are usually fired off into the sea of unemployment as well. It's not like we're dealing with outstanding talents. Marone was never considered to be a tactical mastermind or exceptional coach. Caldwell, the guy who reached for the disaster that was Blake Bortles, they are replaceable. But this is where Shahid Khan comes in. Khan is a very hands-off owner, as one can tell with the utter chaos that ensued over the past few years. In these situations, though, you have to blow it up. Hell, you already are with the player core, so why not start fresh without any sort of taint on the team? Khan doesn't think this. In fact, he's so enamored with whatever the hell the two are doing that he keeps them around, cutting off the head and letting the body flail around aimlessly. This is apparently the Jacksonville way. The offseason only leads to more pain. The newest victims, AJ Bouye and Calais Campbell, traded to other AFC teams for a mere pittance of what the fans value them as. They did get rid of Nick Foles' awful contract, but that shouldn't have been signed to begin with. A massive impasse with Yannick Ngakoue just got even wider, as Ngakoue will more than likely never play another down in Jacksonville. Leonard Fournette's stock has fallen so far down that he was shopped to everyone for a day 3 pick. Even for that price, no one bit. If it weren't for the pandemic, they would have had back-to-back home games in London. All the better since they probably don't know the damage report. Out of that vaunted Sacksonville defense, only 2 players are left. Miles Jack and Avery Jones. They had an amazing defense, a potential Super Bowl contender, and hopes and dreams.
And it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
Over the past few years, one cold truth has come into the light. Shahid Khan does not care. It's shown in how little he's done to maintain the flicker of success they had. It's shown in how he's had to react to scandal instead of sniff it out before it becomes a fire. It shows in how he's been eager to let the Jaguars become London's team instead of endear itself to Duval. It shouldn't be like this, though, since this man is the living embodiment of the American dream. An immigrant who came to this country with nothing, worked hard for decades fighting and clawing to stake a claim in this land to become one of the more influential men in the modern age. Yet in this timeline, he's just like every apathetic owner out there. I won't shit on the fans that hard, even though you let the winning get to your head since you're in a dire situation no matter how you look at it. You can't root for the future core since they may end up being gone in a few years if things don't improve. You can't get attached to the team since it's only a matter of time before they move to London. And don't worry, Khan will win. If there's anything that the NFL has shown over the past decade, it's that they don't give a flying fuck about goodwill towards cities. Not in the quest for the almighty dollar. It's honestly the same kind of arrogance that ruined what could have been something interesting in Sacksonville. Now all that's left is a return to the unforgiving reality of seasons past. The Jaguars are once again the forgotten lol cow. Welcome back to Irrelevance, Duval.
Starts at the 1 and looking for a little breathing room, and they get that and plenty more. Derrick Henry still going. Stays in bounds. He might go 99 yards for the touchdown.